Oliver, I guess a lot of people woke up to a bit of a shock to learn that the second stage of the high-speed rail was going to go straight through their backyard under the proposals released this morning. And I guess for you and I that talk to a lot of companies with relatively short investment horizons, and last week we talked about the fact that people were unlikely to invest in England because we were outside, or our decision on Europe was 5 years away. How on earth do you encourage investment on a project that's not going to finish until the late 2020s?
I think with difficulty, the government's already got its work cut out to convince people whose properties lie on the route, who'll have a rail line going through the back gardens, that it's a good thing. But it also wants to part fund this high-speed 2 link with private sector money. Obviously the government finances are stretched, so it needs private sector money wherever it can for this kind of thing. But as you say, it's a very long time frame. It's going to be the late 2020s, and companies, if the investors, if they're going to put money behind it, will want to see returns on a much shorter time frame, suggesting that the government will need to be quite specific about what people are investing in and how the returns are going to come.
And have they said anything about that sort of funding arrangement yet?
No, very little. There's just vague references in this morning's document to private sector involvement as well as government involvement and local authority involvement, but it's keeping its cards close to its chest, I guess, at the moment, perhaps because it's so far away. It'll also be aware that the recent history of private sector involvement in UK rail isn't great. We had Railtrack that went bust, we had Metronet and Tube Lines, both of which were meant to maintain the tube. Neither of those really worked out for the private sector, so there'll understandably, I think, be some nerves.
So public-private initiatives have a checkered history. I guess also so does costing. At the moment, the initial estimates are sort of 30 billion plus. Again, how can you even contemplate what that will finally be?
Well, it's difficult to know, and it's perhaps subject to huge revisions, and when there are revisions on these things, they're usually upwards. The most notorious example is the West Coast Main Line. The modernisation of that was supposed to cost 2 billion. It ended up costing close to 9 billion and on a lower specification than the original £2 billion project. So there could be huge increases. That said, the Crossrail project, which is currently digging its way underneath London, that seems to be on budget at the moment. So there aren't always cost overruns, but it does seem to be an issue that this far out, it's very hard to tell exactly how much everything will cost, particularly when it comes to the detail of costing of how much each tunnel and each cutting is going to cost. So that also will make some investors nervous.
Well, normally on Lex we'd relate everything back to value and investment opportunities, but it sounds a little early in this particular case to begin to talk about stocks which may benefit. So let's wait and see. Thank you very much for that, Oliver.